Once there was an explosion, a bang which gave birth to time and space. Once there was an explosion, a bang which set a planet spinning in that space. Once there was an explosion, a bang which gave rise to life as we know it. And then came the next explosion.
When I started to play Death Stranding, I didn't know what to expect. What I knew was that the story was going to be convoluted as hell, seeing all the gameplay trailers and videos beforehand. With Kojima helming the project, I was sure the game was going to lie anywhere between Bizarreville to Weird as Helltown. After finishing the game in no more than 45 hours, and I rushed through the game, I came to the conclusion that his genius is unquestionable. What exactly do I mean? Well, that's what we're gonna talk about in today's review. Short disclosure before we start, the people from Sony Romania were kind enough to give me a review copy like 3 weeks before the release date. So, let's begin. Death Stranding is a game about restoring relationships and building bridges. It's also about being isolated and reaching out for human interaction, metaphorically as well as physically. The story is set in a post-apocalyptic world after the Death Stranding hit, a phenomenon that bridged another world into this one and gave birth to all sorts of complications. Thus came into existence the BTs that are one type of enemy you will come across in the game. The mystery of the Death Stranding is explained by the end among a plethora of other story elements, and if your brain has the chops for it, you might get just every bit of information thrown at you. Sadly for me, I didn't manage to understand every little detail Kojima came up with, but that's fine. It just means that unlike simpler games, this one has been heavily worked on. Quality first, Kojima-san. Much respect. The story elements are so complex at times that if you literally blink for an instant, you lose track of the narrative thread and you can find yourself going, what the hell are they on about? Nonetheless, what Hideo Kojima managed to write is a work of art, worthy of endless hours of discussions for years to come. Even though for me, some elements of the story were contradictory in nature, I can't help but feel I can't critique it 100% because I got lost in translation at certain points. Death Stranding is an open-world action-adventure game where you play as Sam Porter Bridges, played by the awesome Norman Reedus. Your job in the game, because it's literally a job, is in the name. Porter meaning a courier or transporter. And you do just that. You take missions and deliver packages to various holograms of NPCs, all while the story unfolds. That's basically what you do the entire game. During your many travels on foot, you will occasionally come across enemies. The combat isn't something revolutionary by any means, I even found it basic at times. You fight off normal humans that want to steal your cargo, and the BTs, the supernatural beings that bring the horror elements. The latter serve as an obstacle that lies between you and your destination. When you do come across the BTs, the atmosphere is just loaded with dread. At least in the first part of the game, as gradually it becomes more of a nuisance than anything. Kojima-san brought to the table aspects of realism with regard to some combat elements. For example, the fact that you can use your inventory as weapons. Lifelike elements such as these you will encounter almost every step of the way. On the other hand, the shooting mechanics, I'm afraid, are lacking in precision and thus didn't tickle me fancy. Seriously, they didn't do anything for me. I found them annoying and really clumsy at times. From the way you walk to how you're carrying literally everything on your back and how that impacts your movements. From this point of view, I've never played anything like this before and I welcomed it with open arms. If nothing else, it makes you feel like you're playing with a human being and not a superhero. However, what I didn't care for at all is the resource gathering. Basically, you can build a lot of structures that help you on your merry way. Like roads, for example. They take a lot of resources to build and it only gets harder as you progress. You can gather them solo by doing missions, or you can get them from other players online. Basically, Death Stranding is an online game as well as a single-player one, but not in the traditional sense. It borrowed from the Dark Souls concept of an online multiverse and took it one step further. You don't get to meet up or see any other players, but you can share resources or vehicles. This part of the game I enjoyed heavily because even structures such as bridges built by someone in their world are going to show up in yours and make things a lot easier for you. It's quite smart when you think about it. But coming back to the solo resource gathering, at times I was frustrated as hell that I had to grind my ass off for hours on end just to make my life easier in the long run. This affected my experience with the pacing of the game, and more often than not, it discouraged me from wanting to play that section of the game. I felt more like a slave rather than a choice I decided to make on my own. Another element of the game design is the progression system. Everything is gradually inserted into the game from the beginning through the end. You start out with nothing while having kind of a hard time in the beginning, then the strain of the experience is lessened by the end. All of this said and done, after checking through all the less enjoyable parts of Death Stranding, after the end credits rolled, for a third time I think, the aftertaste I was left with was incredible. Titles with stories like these simply prove that video games are the superior art form when it comes to storytelling, especially when it is told through the lens of a Hollywood-quality format of cinematography, put together with an incredible cast of actors, with Norman Reedus, Mads Mikkelsen, and basically everyone else in the cast have done a stellar job of interpreting their characters. That's why I don't recommend this game to everyone. This is for adults only, or for younglings that want to be faced by an intricate and original story. Those who can truly appreciate the genius behind it all will have an experience the likes of which they have rarely been witness to.
Once there was an explosion. A bang which gave rise to life as we know it. And then came the next explosion. An explosion that will be our last.
And that about wraps it up, folks. I've been Gabriel, and thanks so much for staying until the end. If you like this video and want to help us grow our channel, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. See you next time, and keep on gaming, brothers and sisters.